This video is sponsored by World Anvil. Yesterday, I talked about Keith Ammann's book, The Monsters Know What They're Doing, where Keith went through the 2014 Monster Manual stat blocks and explained the most effective ways to run them in combat, since the stat blocks themselves don't really offer a ton of guidance towards that effect. But you might also remember that at the beginning of this month, I made a video about a fight I once ran, where I really made sure I selected a battle map that would make the fight as interesting as possible, by forcing the players to make creative choices. So today we are combining those two philosophies. After I talked to Keith about his book, we also ran a little exercise. I chose a monster who I feel has a really underwhelming stat block. That was the easy part. There's a couple of those in the 2014 Monster Manual. And then we figured out what kind of battle map would best complement that stat block. Now, Keith has another book all about monster layers, which I'll admit I haven't read yet, but which will probably be the next book I discuss on the channel when I get around to it. But that's why I didn't pick a monster you might encounter in a layer, like the Aboleth, which is one of my favorite monsters in theory. Like, the lore is so fantastic, but I do feel can often be very underwhelming in combat. But I do know there's an Aboleth layer in that book, so I'm excited to get to that book and see a little bit more about Keith's approach to monsters with layers. But that's the reason why, for this exercise, I specifically chose a monster who I think could come up more in a random encounter. And in fact, I chose a creature who I don't just think has a boring stat block, but one where the stat block actively fails to capture the monster's core fantasy. Today, we're finding the perfect environment for a hydra encounter. Because the problem with the hydra is that whenever a hydra takes damage, one of their heads falls off. That does not actually reflect the way people would attack a hydra, but it also is the only way they can really channel the core fantasy of the hydra, and it's just a bummer. I understand why it happened, it's just bad design, but what if, maybe, you could salvage it with a really good battle map? If you want to keep up with my bonus videos this week, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. It honestly helps me so much more than you could even realize. The more that you watch these videos as soon as they come out, the better they do in the algorithm, and the best way to find out about a new video is to be subscribed and have the bell rung, so that way you're watching them as soon as they come out because you're getting notifications. It really helps a lot. Now, let's make a battle map for a hydra encounter. One of the problems I have with the hydra is the execution of the multiple head effect of, if you do damage to this creature, one of its heads just falls off. Feels absolutely arbitrary, and we all know why it's there, because that's how the hydra
That's the myth.
works. Yeah. And because you don't, first of all, you don't target individual body parts in D&D 5th edition, and if you did, no one would target the neck of a hydra. Everybody knows better. So in order to simulate the effect of cutting off a head and having more pop up, they just, if you do a certain amount of damage, the head just falls off.
Right.
I find that to be a incredibly poor execution.
We don't know yet how that's going to change in 2025. Maybe that'll be different. But that is how it is in the 2014 Monster Manual.
Lord, I hope so. But I wanted to know, where do you think is the ideal place to deploy the hydra with the stat block that we have from 2014?
Well, first of all, the hydra has a swim speed. Then it seems foolish not to give it water. And I notice when I just pulled up the hydra stat block on D&D Beyond.
I have it in front of me as well, yeah.
Scrolled down, and oh look, down there at the bottom, it says Environment Swamp, which is exactly the first thing I would think of for a creature that's amphibious, that has a land speed and a swim speed and is equally fast on both. Other possibilities might include coastal areas, particularly the coast of a large lake. And it would have to be a large lake because the hydra has to have something to eat. And I think as a small pond would just cause it to starve. It wouldn't have enough protein there to consume.
Okay.
But similarly, you probably wouldn't find it out in the ocean either, because it just doesn't seem like something that, regularly swims around and is not the hydra really feels to me like something that wants to stay in one place and establish a territory, and it is a monstrosity. And when I think of different creature types, when I think of monstrosities, I think of something that is like a predatory animal, but that has enough sentience to be malicious and brutal because of its maliciousness, because of its malice. And so, to me, that goes hand in hand with territoriality. So I feel like a hydra has a focal point, a center point. Its nest or whatever. A nest doesn't feel like the right word, but you know what I mean. The place where it always comes back to.
Mm-hmm.
And goes out from that place and comes back, and goes out and comes back. And as much as it can stay in that one place, it stays there, but every once in a while it goes out and comes back. I think swamps are very good for that. I think certain coastal areas, particularly of large closed bodies of water, nothing so large as like the Baltic Sea, but maybe something as big as Lake Superior. That is where I would start.
I think part of the reason why it doesn't feel like it would just swim indefinitely is because it only holds its breath for an hour. It's not amphibious.
Right. This is not an ocean creature. I mean, 1 hour is about as long as a whale can hold its breath, so I guess it could be an ocean creature.
But it's certainly not going to be tangling with krakens.
No, and I imagine a hydra being more of a thing like it rests on the bed of the body of water, and then when it needs to breathe, it just like sticks one head up, takes a breath, and then pulls it back down.
Like a blowhole, but in reverse.
So yeah, and also, I think the very nice thing about a swamp for a hydra is that, well, okay, so if a hydra's out in the middle of a lake, it can't really get you, and you can't really get it unless you row out there to go after it. But it's not really that much of a threat to others unless and until it comes to shore. Whereas in the swamp, it's not as deep. And also the swamp is going to be difficult terrain for almost anything else, but not the hydra, because it has the 30-foot land speed and the 30-foot swim speed. It's going to get around in the swamp just fine, and so it's going to have that advantage over other creatures that have difficulty getting around in the swamp. So it's a very advantageous place for the hydra to be.
It's interesting because at first my thought when you said swamp and scrolling down and seeing it listed as well was, well, we're in a similar problem that I have with the forest, which is the water can't be that deep. Otherwise, like you said, people are going to be rowing across it, at which point it may as well just be a lake. But the difference between a lake and a swamp is that if you're rowing out there and something attacks the boat, you can jump out and there's potentially low branches or even vines. And if you have players swinging from vines and attacking the hydra, suddenly you have the reason why people are attacking the necks, because that is the only... First of all, the reason I was leaning towards water is I was thinking you have to submerge the base of this creature, otherwise there's no reason to attack the neck. Everyone just targets the center mass. And so that's why I was leaning towards water, even without factoring in the fact
the body stays below, the heads and necks come up above. Yeah, that's a good point.
But the reason, I think you're right, the reason I so like the swamp is because if something does attack, because if let's assume, first of all, there's more reason for people to cross through swamps, because you're going to see the hag, or you're going to get across the swamp to get to the mountains of pain, or whatever it is.
There's a hydra in the lake, you just go around the lake.
Exactly. If you have to cut through the swamp, it's easier to not know that the hydra's in there, because, there's less opportunity to spot it. So it would be reduced visibility. There's maybe a monster in the swamp, you know that. You don't know what it is. I'm really liking the idea of people having to row through certain portions of the swamp. Or it could only be chest deep, but then the creature's body would still be pretty visible, I would imagine. So there's probably pockets of deeper water. But even if they do hop in a boat, if it attacks the boat, you have to bail out and they're running around on roots or low tree branches or doing the swashbuckling swinging. And I am really excited about that fight now, something that I think has been really lacking whenever I've tried to deploy a hydra is a reason to get the players close to the heads and the necks, because everyone wants to keep their distance.
Yeah. Here's one other thing I love about the swamp. It's damp. Everything is damp. The wood is damp. The water, it's marshy, wet. And how do you keep the hydra's heads from growing back?
Oh my gosh.
You have to burn them. So somehow in this infinitely moist place, you have to get a fire going and keep it going and not drop it in the water. You've got to create the source of fire and you've got to hold on to it and keep it going. And the hydra can attack the fire. So, that is another dimension that makes the players have to think about how they're going to do this and not just bash their way through it.
Ooh, wow, I really like that. That really does solve a lot of the problems with the hydra, is that everyone just defaults to fire damage and everyone targets the base.
How do you even light a torch in a swamp? You got to, hopefully somehow you kept your torches dry.
Well, here's the other...
Wrapped them in oilcloth or something like
Here's the other thing you can do. You can be a little mean with the swamp, is you can have methane.
Flammable swamp gas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you can say, okay, you can absolutely...
You don't know where those pockets are.
You can absolutely do fire damage to this hydra. But all you have to do is have this reeking smell of sulfur as it approaches, and people are going to get real wary about how much fire damage they do. And by the way, that could absolutely... What happens afterwards, if they happen to catch a pocket of swamp gas, could absolutely obliterate that hydra. It might also present some other problems.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really
Probably
really
won't burn
fun.
the trees, but it might burn you.
That's really fun. I'm also thinking about like Shadow Dark, because I'm playing a little bit of Shadow Dark as well, or I was before my baby was born. And that's what Attack the Light made me think of, and just the meanness of going into an area and you smell swamp gas and just having to make that choice of, do you go with the torch and really, really roll the dice? Because it would be an advantage until it stops being one.
That is what makes combat fun. Having to make choices.
Yep.
And getting the payoff when your choice turns out to be right.
Man, I really want to run a Hydra encounter now. Which is exactly what I was looking for.
Not necessarily that exciting as a monster, but when you put them in the right environment, you get a lot more out of them.
Yeah, and that I think is exactly what I'm trying to work on in general with my session prep, is thinking about environments more. It's always been a weakness of mine, but coming at it from this perspective, and yeah, that opened up a lot of interesting ideas. I have to admit, for some reason, as soon as we started talking about the players fighting a hydra in a swamp, I was just thinking about a deleted scene from the 2005 King Kong movie, where the heroes are on a raft in a swamp and they get attacked by a dinosaur. I think this was cut from the movie not because the movie was too long or the effects didn't look very great. Neither of those really seemed to be an issue with that movie. I like that movie, but neither of those were deal breakers. But I honestly believe this scene was cut because it features the least convincing paddling I've ever seen before. But also, this would be a great scenario for a hydra attack, with the hydra heads springing up from all sides of the boat. But also, as Keith pointed out, the player characters could just be trekking through the swamp on foot. And maybe they're walking on a huge branch or a root or a log and the hydra heads emerge from the water below them and around them. Or maybe the water isn't that deep and they are just walking through it, but the hydra can still use the swamp foliage as cover, with its heads attacking from between branches and around trees and through roots and vines, while its body is still completely hidden. I honestly think that would be really scary because you wouldn't know where the next head was coming from. And so once again, we can see just what a huge difference it makes to put the encounter in the right environment. And speaking of working with the right environment, sometimes we need the right environment to unlock our own creativity. Just like the Hydra, if you try to do your creative work in the wrong location, you're not going to get the same effect. And one way that you can create the ideal circumstances to free up your creative potential is by signing up for today's sponsor, World Anvil. World Anvil is a fantastic online toolkit that you can use to create articles for your game. They've got templates for monsters, locations, magic items, NPCs, and so much more. And they've got some truly incredible templates you can use to make your articles look professionally designed, because these templates were professionally designed by some of the best in the business. And they've got questions you can answer to help flesh out more details for your articles. And once you do have those details, you can use their super convenient auto-linker feature to connect related articles together. So when you're writing the article for the Swamp of Lost Heroes, you can include a link for the Mountains of Pain that the heroes are on their way to, as well as a link for the hydra they faced in a dramatic and dynamic encounter. And if you visit worldanvil.com/supergeekmike and use the promo code SUPERGEEK at checkout, you can save 51% off of any annual membership. Once again, that's worldanvil.com/supergeekmike and use the promo code SUPERGEEK at checkout. Thank you so much to World Anvil for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much for watching, and once again, huge thanks to Keith Ammann for taking the time to talk to me about his book and his approach to analyzing monster stat blocks. Again, this video is not sponsored by Keith or any of his publishers. I wasn't asked to promote his work in any way. I just think his book is a really valuable resource, and you should check it out. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell so you can catch my videos as soon as they come out. You can support me financially on Patreon or by becoming a YouTube member or making a one-time donation on Ko-fi. You can also join my Discord server to hang out with other cool people and sign up for my newsletter to get the latest updates whenever I've got something important to say, which does happen sometimes. All those links are in the doobly-doo below. If you missed my other video about the importance of the battle map in one of the best combats I've ever run, you can watch that video right here. Until next time, play fair and have fun.